Thank you guys. Great turnout. I don't know how many chairs are set up, but I guess there's about 150 guys here. You should have a sheet on your table here. I'm just going to go for a few minutes, and then Bishop Kurtz will be speaking after me. Bishop's given me the goal of missionary discipleship. I want to know how many of you guys are doing Exodus 90? By show of hands. Wow. Wow. Some of you, okay, the guys who don't have their hands up may say, well, what is Exodus 90? I would encourage you, if you haven't heard about it, just Google or just go on exodus90.com. What I love about this, it's 90 days of mind, body, and soul. One of the things we're trying to do is to create and form missionary disciples, and I think one of the best ways we can do that is by praying, by fasting and making room for God, and then by being with other brothers. I'm reading a book, I just finished a book right now called In His Likeness by Edward Sri, S-R-I. He's one of the founders of Focus along with Curtis Martin. And he used this as a foundational scripture. It's Acts 2:42. Says the disciples devoted themselves to four things. The teaching of the apostles, which we would say would be the study of Scripture and the Catechism, fellowship, the breaking of the bread, which we know is the Eucharist, sacraments, and prayer. So think about that in your life. Do you have these four elements active in your life in order to be formed as a missionary disciple? Do you know what the apostles taught? Are you with other men in fraternity? Are you frequenting the sacraments, especially Eucharist, confession, adoration like we just did? And are you praying? So Exodus 90 is something that encompasses all of these, and I just find this momentum building in our diocese. We've only been doing this 3 days, and I don't know about you guys, but I just find this space being opened up, not only in my life, but in my heart for God. I get home and I would normally just turn on the television for a ball game in the background, and now, you know, television is off limits, and I find myself, wow, what am I going to do now? I've got time to pray, to read, to do other things that otherwise just kept getting pushed off in my life. So it's not too late to start. If guys want to get started, you see, you know, half the guys in this room are doing it. Come see one of us, especially where's Tim and Brian or Michael. We can get you set up afterward. We've got groups going on all over the diocese, and the goal is that we meet at least once a week to encourage one another on this journey. On the other side of the sheet, I want you to just draw your attention. I'm not going to go through this in detail. Missionary Disciple Plan of Life. So this is something that we do with our seminarians, and Bishop said, I want you to bring this to the lay faithful of our diocese. We believe that there's four pillars of formation. Oftentimes we focus on education. You know, even in the titles, we used to have the director of catechesis, the director of religious education, and those things are good, and education and catechesis are important, but they're really only 1/4 of our formation as disciples. We have, as you can see here, human formation, spiritual, intellectual, and apostolic or pastoral formation. So look at this area of human formation. And I broke this, I read this by Father Steve Borello, and he said, maybe develop these in stages, because he says, I know how men work. If they see stage 4 right away on all of these, and they're going to think, I can't do this, and so they don't do anything. So, you know, like in stage 1, can I get some exercise 3 times a week, commit myself to 7 hours of sleep? Those who are doing Exodus 90 sound familiar? And spend a couple hours a week with friends. You know, this is just kind of basic stuff, human stuff, and then you develop it where you're really working on your diet, your recreation, you know, spending more time with friends, because we believe that the faith gets passed on through friendship. In your spiritual formation, you know, how much time do you spend in prayer? You know, if I'm not going to daily Mass, can I go to maybe one extra daily Mass a week? Many of you guys are going to Mass every day of the week, which is amazing. How often do I go to confession? You know, the church says minimally once a year, but are we minimalists?
No.
Hopefully not. I always say this to men who are married. I said, do you say to your wife, honey, what is the least I need to do to keep you happy? But yet, we laugh, but do we do that to our actions? And do we say the same to God? God, what is the least I need to do to keep you happy? Or what is the least I need to do to sneak in that back door of heaven? So this area would include, Mass, confession, personal prayer, eventually maybe getting a spiritual guide or director, and fasting. And so, those on Exodus 90, we're not eating any sweets, no alcohol, no snacks between meals, cold or lukewarm showers, which can be tough. And I want to draw your attention to those things. The goal is not that we just white knuckle it through the fasting. All of this is meant to point us to a deeper relationship to Christ. And so make sure we keep our eyes focused on the goal. Again, talking to Father Steve, one of his concerns about Exodus 90 was, he said, guys are just going to focus on what they're giving up and lose sight of, this is meant to lead me into a relationship with Christ. And so I want you to, each week I'm going to try to make a little video that we send out to keep our eyes focused on the goal. If this is making you miserable and making you a worse husband and father, stop it. It's not meant to do that. It's meant to make you more charitable and more loving. Intellectual formation, let's just start with reading the readings for daily Mass at the beginning. And then maybe you start adding in another good Catholic book, studying the Catechism, maybe eventually taking courses in Scripture and the Catechism. And then the last stage of the apostolic formation, and these are all going on simultaneously. How am I using the gifts God has given me to share them with others? Any of you like Matthew Kelly? So one of his books, The 4 Signs of a Dynamic Catholic, he says our prayer, study, generosity, and evangelization. Does this sound familiar? It kind of works perfectly in these 4 areas of formation. Also, focus talks about divine intimacy, authentic friendship, spiritual multiplication. Again, they fit into these 4 areas of formation. So I bring this to your attention just to start thinking about yourself. What is my plan of life? What is my goal in order to grow in discipleship? And if you're at stage 1, or maybe you're not, you're in stage 0.1 right now, that's okay. Start somewhere. And then, get together with brothers. Like, do you guys feel strong together here? I know I do. I'm strengthened by the number of guys in this room to see that we're not alone. We're all trying to grow in holiness. We're all trying to do better. We're all sinners, but we're in this journey together. The devil wants to isolate us. He wants to keep us to ourselves, and when he gets us isolated, he's got us right where he wants us. Jesus says, I came so that you might be one. And the more we gather together like this, weekly in small groups, monthly in larger groups, and my goal is to just have this annual missionary disciple huge blowout, to know that there are great things happening right here in our own diocese. So I got about a minute. Anybody have any questions about this, about Exodus 90, missionary discipleship? We're good. So who's going to be next? Mike? So thanks, guys, and let's get our plan of life together.